Hello, all, and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and each week I'm joined by some of my favorite husky, hairy, huggable homos to review a film, either current or classic. And this week and the last few weeks, we've been delving more and more into that classic category, of course, with hashtag COVID-19 going on. Not necessarily a lot of new big summer blockbusters coming out to talk about. So it's been kind of fun to revisit some old films and talk about some films that we have seen to some degree and have not seen to other degrees. And we're going to hear a little bit more about how this is going to work, why we chose the movie that we chose here coming up in just a little bit. But let me introduce you to my wonderful co-hosts. Will Lindis is with us here. Welcome, Will. How are you?
Hey, Brad. I'm really good. I'm actually really, really good. I think the movie we're about to talk about is going to be a really, really good conversation, and I'm super excited to dive into it with you. So, yeah, it's going to be a good night.
I am glad that you are excited. I'm always excited when you're excited, so that makes for excitement, I think. Maybe. Yes. Okay. Jim Pugliafico is normally with us on the show. We are hoping to have him with us here momentarily. We had a little bit of a technical issue on Jim's side, so hopefully he's getting that resolved and will be with us soon. But we have a little bit of a treat for everybody in the meantime while we wait for Jim. Once upon a time, in a galaxy far, far away, there used to be a fourth Movie Bears podcast host. And unfortunately, we don't get this individual every week anymore, but it's always a true delight for us when we do. Chris Lopez, sexy voice of the Movie Bears podcast, is with us for this week's discussion. Chris, it's been a hot minute. How the hell are you?
May the fourth be with you. Haha.
I got chills.
Doing pretty good. Hanging in there. You know, some days are better than others, but trying to still keep my distance from most people. With the kind of soft reopening of the city, got to have like a distant lunch, picnic lunch from somebody on the weekend, and that was absolutely wonderful.
Ooh, distant lunch.
I was watching those pictures and I felt super jealous. Like, just the idea of being able to like connect, even if it's, you know, from across the yard, from a few feet away, it's still very, very welcome, especially in these very isolating times. But Chris, I'm hoping that one of these days when you're on and Brad introduces you, hey, the sexy voice of the Movie Bears podcast, you immediately step in with, hey, everybody. I'm Chris Lopez, and I'm so glad to be here with y'all.
I'll have to keep that one in my back pocket.
Yeah.
I'd pay $50 Monopoly cash for that. That would be wonderful. Oh, boy. Well, Chris, we are so glad to have you with us. Welcome back. It's been a little while, but we're jazzed that you could join us for this week's discussion. Jordan Riley in the chat says, hey, Bears, who is the bear by Brad? I have to imagine Jordan means you, Chris. So Jordan, hopefully that introduction answered your question. Jim is with us. Let's see if it's working. Hi.
Hi. I hope it's working. Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you.
I'm here. Hope you can hear me okay. If not, just tell me to get the hell out. I'll
Sounding good so far.
There's a table for you, Jim.
I can hear you guys too. Awesome.
It seems to be working, and that's actually a really good thing that it's working for you now, Jim, because I don't know if you guys know this, but today is Jim Pugliafico's birthday. So, babe, officially on air, happy birthday.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to still be here after this many birthdays. That's wonderful.
You know, Jim, we would try to sing to you, but trying to organize like a group sing virtually would just be like audio hell for the listeners. So imagine us doing this like angelic choir, us like singing to you the praises, adulations of your birthday. Like that happened. Well, just imagine, we had to cut it for the people listening to the podcast. It was great. We had to cut it for time.
I'm not buying that bullshit, Will. I'm just saying that it's not really a birthday unless somebody sings to you. So maybe
Unless
Brad
someone
will sing
blows
to
out
me
the
later.
candles.
Save you guys, but yeah.
I'll send you something off there.
Whoa. I mean, we know what you're supposed to do on birthdays. So there you go. Well, Bill Zanowitz from the Comic Book Bears podcast says, happy
hi, Bill.
birthday, Jim.
Thanks, Bill.
Hey, Bill. Glad to have you with us. Welcome. Also, pursuant to our introduction of you, Chris, Steve in the chat says, Chris Lopez is like having a Barry White soundtrack to my movie Bears podcast. And I completely agree. Chris, I think one of these days we need to have you like read an audio book for us. We'll pick a short one, so it's not super long, but we need it to listen to when we're alone. So if you can make that happen.
Yeah, actually, for some volunteer work this week, I'll be reading like children's stories for a nonprofit. So,
wow,
delightful.
Yeah.
Like online kind of thing?
Yeah, like recorded and sent to somebody. Yeah, I don't know all the details just yet, but it's it's for a nonprofit. All these kids that are going to be trapped for the summer. Essentially, they need stimulation of some sort.
That's awesome that you'd be able to do that. I wish I had a voice that could get me, gigs like that. You have
Free gigs, volunteer gigs.
Well, got to start somewhere.
Jim, if only you had the type of voice that would work well in an audio medium like a podcast or something.
Jim, you know so much about movies. I bet that podcast could even like center around movies where you give your opinion on movies.
But there's a lot of movie podcasts out there. You need something that really differentiates you. Like, what is it that makes you you? You and I don't know. Maybe you and your golf friends? No.
Maybe. Aren't you part of some like group or social thing about like hairy fat men or something? I don't know. I think I read it on your Facebook.
Organization? Is that what you're
something like
me?
that? Yeah.
We'll have to like work.
Sounds like something I might do.
Yeah. Scratch all that. We don't need that. Well, we are very glad to have a bunch of folks with us live already here on Facebook. Of course, we're doing something new the last few weeks. We've switched our platform over. Of course, you can still enjoy a video version of the show on YouTube a couple days after we go live, but Facebook is now the primary way that we do that. And so Will uploads the video for us once it's available, and then that becomes something you can peruse on YouTube. And of course, Jim takes the audio and turns it into the audio show, which is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you enjoy listening to your podcast, you can probably find us. So however you like to tune in and engage with the show, thanks so much for being here. Welcome. We're glad to have you with us along for the ride. Now, Will, when I kicked the show off, I mentioned we're kind of doing something special over the last few weeks. Could you maybe clue folks in, if this is the first time they've tuned in for a while, what is it exactly we're doing?
Yeah, so you think of it this way. There's like literally hundreds of new movies that get released each year alone, stacked up over every year of our lives and of the times that happened before our lives. So it's too many movies for us for any one person to have caught up with every single one of them. You're gonna have gaps in your film history, and sometimes those gaps aren't like those little tiny cracks that you can just sort of disregard. Sometimes they're pretty massive canyons, and we've decided to, over the course of the last 3 weeks, this being week 3, to traverse those canyons. 1 week we looked at a film that Jim had not caught up with. 1 week we caught up with one that I hadn't caught up with. And this week, well, Brad confessed to us that he had not yet seen 2004's Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, a film starring Jim Carrey and Kate Winslet. And we couldn't let that stand. So we all had a chance between last week and this week to either watch for the first time or to rewatch this classic film. And we're about to serve up all of our takes to you. I don't know what all the takes are going to be. They could be some fire takes. I don't know. I'm excited to hear all of that. But before we do all of that, a huge bit of warning. Normally our format is we talk about the movie spoiler-free, give a gap, and then go into spoilers. But this is a deep dive discussion on a classic film. So pretty much after the jump, we're going straight into spoiler territory. So consider this your warning. There will be some spoilers up ahead. I'm stalling a little bit now. So if anyone still needs to protect that virginal innocence, they have a few moments to gap and take a step away. And okay, we're past that. So without any further ado, it's time for us to talk about Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. So Brad, this was your first time seeing the film. I think because of that, you should definitely have the honors of filling us in. What was this one about, and did you like it?
Yeah, so I remember when this movie came out back in 2004, everybody was like gaga over this movie. And that was back when I was in my well, if everyone's gaga about it, I don't want to watch it. I'm going to wait phase.
Hipster stage.
I don't know if it was hipster, but those were the DBT, Dark Brad times. We're well past that, hopefully. But yeah, I never caught up with this movie originally, and it was one of those that I was like, you know what, I'll watch it at some point. It's on my list. I'll get to it. And 16 years later, I still hadn't quite gotten into it. And there's just so many movies that come out every year. I mean, if I were to maintain a list, it would be longer than the state of Florida is long and keep growing before I could even get to half of those movies, I'm sure. But it's one of the reasons I love that we're doing this segment, because it kind of forced me to take a film like that so many people have seen and put it squarely on my radar, forced me to watch it. Will, to your question, what did I think of the film? I'll get to that here in a second, but I wanted to call out a few things. I did not realize this, but Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind is from a screenplay by Charlie Kaufman, who wrote and directed 2015's Anomalisa. And while I wasn't the hugest fan of Anomalisa, I mean, I did like it. It did some interesting things. And so, watching the movie, the credits came up and I'm like, wait, Charlie Kaufman? I know Charlie. And so it kind of, just added another layer of this to me. Also, Jim Carrey stars in the film. He's starting to get back into acting roles. We saw him in the latest Sonic the Hedgehog movie, right? Was one of his first films, and God knows how long. And Kate Winslet, fresh off the boat, Titanic, back in 2004, kind of. This is one of her first big, non-English period pieces. And I've really only ever seen her in those roles, except for, what was that movie we saw a few years ago with Josh Brolin? I think it was a romance movie that she was in.
Something about pies?
Yeah, I don't know. She lived in the country, and
yep,
he was an escaped convict or something, and she made him a pie.
Oh yeah, it was named after a holiday. I want to say it was called Labor Day.
Labor Day, that's what it was. Labor Day.
Yeah. Nice, Will.
Labor Day.
We reviewed that here on the show. Holy crap.
We did.
Entirely, though.
So this is the second only non English period piece I've ever seen Kate Winslet in. And I thought that both she and Jim Carrey did a phenomenal job in their respective roles. And let me just give the IMDb-ish description of this film's plot. I know spoilers are fair game, but here's the setup. After a painful breakup, Clementine undergoes a procedure to erase memories of her former boyfriend, Joel, from her mind. When Joel discovers that Clementine is going to extremes to forget their relationship, he undergoes the same procedure and slowly begins to forget the woman that he loved. This visually arresting film explores the intricacy of relationships and the pain of loss. So that's the setup. Watching the trailer for this movie way back when it first came out, it looked like it'd be kind of dumb and silly. But I would say this movie is anything but dumb and silly. I mean, it has some silly aspects to it. There's one scene in particular where, spoilers are fair game, where Jim Carrey is his little boy self, but he's an adult in his mind that was just really cringy for me. But overall, I really loved this movie. I loved so much of what this movie tried to do. We have probably all gone through a bad breakup at some point in our lives. Maybe it's even a relationship we'd like to forget. And I will just say I have. There's been relationships I wish I could just completely wipe from my mind. But then I saw this film, and it's so interesting because you take the bad stuff in a relationship, and that's kind of where your brain tends to focus, I think, when you look back. But if you look back further than the bad stuff, you get to all of the good stuff, right? That kind of set all of that up initially. And this movie kind of speaks to, can you successfully, have the good stuff, right? And get rid of the bad. I don't think you can necessarily do that. But if you could wipe the slate clean, would you have a relationship with that same person all over again? Would you still be drawn to each other? Would you still make the same mistakes? And that's what was fascinating to me. We're going to round robin this discussion here in a second because I'm boring to listen to for more than 2 minutes at a time. But it was really fascinating for me to see these two characters who had their minds wiped, their memories erased, sort of find each other again and reconnect. And I can't wait to talk to you guys about that. Some things are kind of left ambiguous. You kind of have to piece some pieces of this together as you figure it out. I hope that I've got it right with the funky back and forth timeline of the film. But I can easily see why this movie is so incredibly beloved by so many people. And I'm really jazzed. I think I put a list of like 8 movies together that I threw out there to you guys, and you were both just zeroed in on this one. So I'm so glad that that's the one you picked.
Yeah, and I'll also say that I had seen this movie before, but it had been a long time, and I'm a little bit. It's a little shameful to say that I probably didn't pay as much attention to this movie when I first saw it as I did this time around. I remember it making an impression on me, but I don't know if I appreciated the nuance of this movie and the ideas it was trying to get across, and the manner in which the filmmaker was trying to, both Michael Gondry and Charlie Kaufman in the story were trying to get across visually. And we'll talk about some of that crazy stuff. But I think what struck me most about, I really loved this movie on the second watch. And I think this is a movie, I think, where you could watch it several times and still pull things out of it that maybe, not that you necessarily missed before, but maybe you didn't make the connections, every single connection, because there's a lot of stitching going on in this movie. And it's very much mirrors the way kind of memory works. This movie is about memory and relationships. But the movie itself, in the way it's presented on the screen, is much like how memory works in our brains, right? We have these fragments of things that either fade away or they come back suddenly. And the movie does that throughout. And I think that was genius, the way it was put on the screen. So yeah, I think I really appreciated it more this time around. And I'm glad we got to watch it together. So that was good.
Me too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, this is one of my all-time favorite movies, hands down. A few years ago, I remember a list went around that was like, what's your favorite movie of every year since the year you were born? So 1982 was this, 1983. 2004 was easily Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. In fact, if you go to my Letterboxd page right now, like, you get to pick like 4 films that kind of define you, and Eternal Sunshine always fits there, because this is the perfect William film. It's a top 10 movie of all time for me, and part of the reason for it is it hits a lot of my buttons exactly right. I love Charlie Kaufman as a writer. I love just how much he writes stories that I think are very witty without necessarily being witty, in a very gauche way. I think that he writes films that are complicated without being so dense that you can't untangle their meanings. He's able to take these sci-fi type elements a lot of times in his stories without it leaning into hard sci-fi tropes. And because of all of that, his scripts feel very uniquely his. Pair that with Michel Gondry, the director here, who is a remarkable visual director. This is the guy that, I mean, I think he broke onto the scene with like Bjork videos, which are movies in and of themselves. That White Stripes video with the Legos moving all over the place. And one of the things that he does with his sort of stamp on films, which he hasn't done with all of them. I mean, he got into like Green Hornet and got kind of sucked into the system on a few things, but he's able to direct in a visual style that takes these. A lot of times, you know, you think about like, okay, why am I not just reading the book of this, or why am I not just listening to the audio of this? Film is a visual medium, and I think sometimes visual directors forget about that. This story, with the way memory flows in and out and the way things disappear and go, is perfect for Gondry's style. He would later ramp that up to like 1,000 degrees past this with Mood Indigo, which you should definitely check out if you like sort of the directorial style here. But even past all of that, like all the shit that makes my like film nerd like nipples super hard, he also
film nerd nipples hashtag film nerd nipples.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a thing, but it is now. But beyond all of that, you know, he tells a very human story here. We've had those situations where we've regretted something and wished we could take it back. We've had those moments where the bad memories outshadowed the good memories to the point where we forget that those good memories are part of what shape us, as well as the bad memories are part of what shape us. You know, when we have those relationships, we learn from them, we grow from them. And if we're not given the opportunity to learn and grow from them, they're sort of pointless. But even something that didn't end quite well, it can still be a launching point for something else. And even beyond that, the thesis of this film is not just about the relationships and the memories that we have, although those are there, but it's also about the baggage that we take into the next relationships. These are two characters who now know what their bad parts are, and they have decided to move forward in some way, shape, or form, even knowing that they're carrying that baggage with them. And I think that that's pretty powerful too, for anyone who sat there and said it didn't work before, therefore it'll never work again. To sort of get back on the saddle and put yourself out there. There's a lot of things here that make me cry every single time, but also just absolutely wow me every single time. So yeah, when this one showed up on the list, Brad, I was so super stoked.
Well, so far, at least, it sounds like lots and lots of love for this film. Will, thank you. Jim, you as well, for sharing your thoughts too. Chris Lopez, how about for you? I mean, did this movie work as well, or was it maybe problematic? Where do you come down?
So when people ask me what my favorite film is, I regularly respond with Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Ah!
Now, that being said, I hadn't seen the movie in about 8 years, and I can't believe it's freaking 16 years old now. Hashtag old. But at the same time, I was like, okay, I'm going to try and go into this with a fresh mind. And it blew me away one more time. I was really, really happy with it. I've been a fan of Charlie Kaufman and Michel Gondry for a long time, and just seeing them in this sort of like perfect marriage together with like just the super trippy visuals, which I love, but also the real focus on relationships, and not even just Jim Carrey and Kate Winslet, but you've got the relationships with Elijah Wood's creepy dude and the doctor, and just there's all these things that are just like interweaving and really, really just flesh out this movie. But at the same time, it's not super dense with sci-fi stuff, and it's just there to serve the story, and I think it serves it really, really well.
Yeah, and I think, because of the structure of the film, I think it might be easy for people to maybe lose it in this movie, especially if you're not paying attention or maybe not used to like nonlinear storytelling, especially where it's jumping from mind space to mind space. It can be a little confusing, but I don't think, and some movies do that, and I think they kind of go over the cliff, like, and it's a little like puzzling for puzzling's sake. because he wants to confuse the audience. I don't think that's the case with this movie. I just think it's the director's style, interweaving perfectly with Charlie Kaufman's more emotionally resonant, relationship story. I just think it just works really well here. And I'm just glad this movie did not go over the cliff. There were a few scenes, even the second time around, I'm like, now wait a minute, is this in his mind, like in her mind, his mind, like what's going on here? And that's why I say this movie, I think, can reward several repeat watches. And I'm glad I got to catch up with it again. And I guess let's get back to Jim Carrey for a minute. I just wish he had done more roles like this. I mean, there's the Truman Show, right, where he's kind of in a more dramatic, even-keeled, normal kind of character. But here, you just felt so much. You feel so much for the guy right from the get-go, and I think that's the sign of a great performance. I don't know if he got what kind of recognition he got for this at the time. Like, was this in amongst kind of his more crazy performances, like what was it, Mask or The Mask or something like that, or was it Ace Ventura? All those kind of crazy over-the-top comedic roles. That wasn't the case here. There were a few flashes, but not really that much. And I wonder, I just think that was wonderful casting to say, like, oh, Jim Carrey can definitely pull off this kind of everyman, kind of lonely, downtrodden, heartsick kind of person. You gotta wonder, like, whether it was a casting director or the director or Charlie Kaufman who said, who'd be perfect for this role is that, that crazy guy, Jim Carrey, who does Fireman Bill or whatever the heck it is. Like, he'd be perfect. So that's some vision right there, right? Because that thing really worked.
Yeah. Well, we're going to get back to some thoughts on Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind here in just a moment. But babe, you've been getting some happy birthday wishes in the live chat. I don't know if you saw Jordan Riley says, happy birthday, big sexy Jim. Mick Jones says, happy birthday, Jim.
Thanks, Mick. Hugs to all of you guys. I see Ben Woolley.
Ben Woolley as well.
Yep.
Jim Pugliafago getting birthday love.
And birthday love, right. Well, thanks
for the
spotlight. I really appreciate it.
Which Jim hates. Jim doesn't like the spotlight, so it's fun to make him a little uncomfortable.
Then we're going to do that a lot more. Brad.
Truth be told, I've had so many birthdays that I'm like, I don't really want any more birthdays at this point. I appreciate all the love I do. I even told Brad, I said, please don't go crazy trying to do anything for my, anything like super special for my birthday this year, especially with everything that's been going on, with the COVID stuff. We can't really do a party. Let's just low key it this year. So,
hey, but Jim, just because we're not able to go out to the restaurants doesn't mean that we didn't hire a dozen Applebee's waiters to come to your door. They're going to be clapping and singing any moment now. I promise.
It's actually at 9. It's actually at 9 p.m. The doorbell's going to ring. Jim's going to open the door, and it's going to be the Applebee's crew singing.
It's going to be an endless line. It's going to be an endless line of wait staff with $5 apps. Like $5 appetizer plates.
Hopefully some margaritas too.
Troy Overhauled. Hey, Troy, good to see you. It says, I've never tuned in,
Troy.
but happy birthday.
It's been a while since we've seen Troy.
Yeah.
Thanks
you,
for coming over, Troy. Good to see you.
Well, getting the spotlight off Jim, because I see he's blushing, we'll return our thoughts to Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind as he tries to wipe his memory of embarrassment. It was interesting for me. So watching this movie, Jim, reminded me of one of the first movies you and I ever saw together. And that was 2009's 500 Days of Summer. But this movie is sort of like it's like an inverse of 500 Days of Summer. Like 500 Days of Summer was all about, and there's a quote that like perfectly encapsulates it. When you go through a breakup and all you do is like look back at the positive stuff and you pine away and pine away. One of the characters says, you know, next time you look back, look again and see all the bad things. But I feel like this movie was the inverse of that. It's like, next time you look back at that relationship, you might see all the bad things, but like, look again. There was a lot of good stuff there too. And so I almost feel like 500 Days of Summer and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind should come as like a dual Blu-ray combo pack or something now. Like they're two sides of the same coin.
Well, they fit into the same category for another reason too, and there was a long stretch of, there was a several year stretch of film there where a lot of the romantic indie dramas were guy finds himself because of a manic pixie dream girl who sort of flits into his life, causes chaos. Think like Garden State and things like that. And a lot of these are actually pretty not great examples of the genre. But I think the two manic pixie dream girl movies that I enjoy the most are Eternal Sunshine and 500 Days of Summer, because both of them actually take the moment to contextualize like the whole like, hey, I'm not just here to serve like, to be this force of chaos that forces you to get off your ass and learn something. I have my own agency and it's up to you to figure that out. Like the Kate Winslet character straight up says that in a monologue to him at one point. And so I appreciate that. And sometimes like I see lists where it's just like, Manic Pixie Dream Girl, and you'll see this movie pop up on it. And I always think like, pump the brakes there for a second.
Yeah.
Pump the brakes though, because this leans into it and then also leans away from it intentionally. Because when you think about it, this is a film about thinking about all of the chaos that a breakup brings to your life, all of the different things that you loathe about a person, but also all of the things that you loved about them to begin with, and how those memories can be so intertwined with one another, but also very separate from one another. I appreciate that so much. They made the character, as you go through it, there's moments where you can watch this film and think, why was he even with her? Because it goes backwards through time, because so at first there's little moments where you see a lot of just them clashing, but as you get to see sort of the seeds of where that moments come from, it reminds you of like why their relationship was so powerful and so interesting and so unique to itself from the get-go. And
yeah, that brings another point to my mind, that these characters are really well fleshed out, and it's like, why is he with her, but also like, why is she with him? He seems to not really like follow a movie arc where you're like, oh, now I'm self-confident and now we can go skipping in the park. Like he stays this kind of miserable feeling introvert who prefers to be quiet and awkward, and he kind of remains the same core person throughout, and eventually that's kind of what drives them apart, is because they're so opposite, and they continue to be. And I think that's very human in a lot of ways. And it gets really emotional at the end because they're like, we're still screwed up, but let's give this a shot and see what happens.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Chris.
Yeah,
I mean, like how you see kind of like how it's the opposites attract, right? He's the introvert, she's the extrovert, and they kind of vibe off, complement each other, and together kind of vibrate or resonate in a way that neither one of them maybe has before. But with that complementary stuff, then you get the conflicts as well, right? Because he's being pulled in a direction he's not comfortable with. She's maybe being pulled in a direction she's not used to. And that's where the kind of the bad feelings come about toward the end of the 2 years.
Yeah, because they cut really deep. Like it's not even like when they even bring up kids, it's not like, oh, you're so wonderful and we love each other and I love your energy and you'll be a great mom. He's like, oh, can you even take care of a kid? And she fucking like goes black right there. And she's just like,
yeah, that was a rough.
You really hurt me there. So like those are the moments in the movie that just really define it.
And it's really interesting if you think about like, I don't know if you guys have ever been in this situation before, but I had somebody that I ended up breaking up with. And a few months later, that person wanted to get back together. And I gave it some thought. And eventually I decided, all right, we'll give it another shot. And I went in thinking like we've learned our lessons from the past and things are going to be different. And I was 22 and a little silly and idealistic, but it didn't work out. For some people it does, but it didn't for me. But as I'm watching this movie, what was so fascinating to me is the Kirsten Dunst character, works for this doctor that has this miracle machine that can wipe your memories. And, she kind of has an arc. She was in love with the doctor. Turns out she had her own memory wiped to erase the pain of not being able to be with him. But when she finds out that this has happened, she decides to kind of like help everybody else or get revenge. It's not really clear on the doctor. She sends like records to all of his patients, including a tape they record talking about why they want to erase that person from their memory. So it was fascinating to see first Kate Winslet's character, Clementine, listening to her tape with the Jim Carrey character Joel in the car. And Clementine's talking about all the things she hates about Joel. They decide to still kind of move forward anyway. So she comes over to Joel's house, and Joel is listening to his tape, talking about all the things he hates about Clem. And there's this moment where like they separate again. It's like they have decided, like, you know what, we've remembered all the things now from the past, why we can't be together, and it seems like they go their separate ways. And maybe it's a little cliche, I don't know, but they decide, you know what, fuck it. Like maybe we're different people now. Maybe this could work. It seems like they're getting back together again and they're going to see what happens. And that was hopeful. Like that was a cool message at the end. I guess if I have just one complaint about the movie though, I feel like that maybe sets some people up for failure in a way, right? Love conquers all, right? I don't know. Was that a little weird for you guys, or was that hopeful message pristine and pure?
I mean, I liked it. And I think that I like it so much because, like you mentioned, this is a film that's not about like all the bad things. It's about all of those moments of light and positivity that we look back on our memory about. And I think the takeaway from the Kirsten Dunst character kind of bleeds into sort of like the message from that end scene. The reason she sent that out was probably a little bit less out of like spite and more out of the fact that she had her memories wiped because she thought that would make things better, that she would be a different person because of it. And I think what she learned instead was that she fell back into those same traps. And so the only way for her to learn and to grow was to have those memories. Well, now we've got Joel and Clementine who have knowledge of what happened in the past. They are at this point now where they have the potential to learn and to grow and to be different. They have the potential to fall into those same traps. And both of them are, I don't even want to say equal opportunity, but both of them are roads that sit out before us. But I've seen this a lot of times from people who feel as though, look, my last relationship ended because she thought I was boring. My last relationship ended because he kept cheating. I don't want to get hurt again, therefore I'm not going to put myself out there again. I think this film reminds you that whether it be with the same person or with someone else, all of those wounds and those scars help you, shape you, make you the new person. And that, when you're ready, you can go out there and you can find something, you can grow, you can be a different person or find happiness. You don't have to be sort of a slave to the past. You can use that past as sort of a springboard forward.
I think one of the themes in the movie deals a lot with kind of like an existential feeling of inevitability. And Joel's character, when faced with the ending of these memories that he knows he's enjoying at the time, he's like, well, what do we do? And Clementine's like, well, you just enjoy it. And a lot of the movie just deals with, you really have to enjoy the moment and appreciate what's around you right now. You never really do know what's going to happen after that. And I think the end of the movie is an embrace of that. They do get back together, they could be breaking up next week. Who knows? But I think
Mhm.
what's important is that they are embracing the love that they have now. Even though he knows he at one point was like, God, her changing her hair all the time is the stupidest fucking thing. And he's like, wait, I love your hair. I can't even like imagine me thinking about that in the future. And I think that is what's the most important is what's happening now. And then you take that, and then that's how you should live your life and make decisions going forward.
Yeah, and at the end, and I liked the hopeful ending because it wasn't just like Pollyanna, like pie in the sky, everything's going to be perfect. They both went in this last time, or the last time we see anyway, kind of eyes wide open to each other, right?
Mhm.
They know what's ahead of them. They know this person. They know the things about that other person that maybe kind of drives them crazy or doesn't makes them unattractive in some way, but and there's still this hope that they can still find the good in that relationship, right? So I just love that. I mean, you could tell that the movie wants you to know that these characters have both grown. They understand each other better, and they're going to get the best out of this relationship because there is something good at the heart of it.
Yeah, I think as long as it's from a standpoint of like growth and change has happened, and I would agree with you guys. I think this movie does try to make it clear, certainly, that some of that has occurred. But I know a lot of people who break up and they get back together again, expecting things to be different. But like nobody has worked on their communication issues. Nobody's worked on their honesty issues. Nobody's worked on their cheating issues. And so it just, it kind of falls apart all over again. So, even though I do think that that message is potentially dangerous, I would agree. And I like the hope that it sets up in terms of if you do enter into it again with your eyes wide open, hopefully you can avoid the same pitfalls, right, that you encountered before. Maybe you can change and adapt, knowing what's coming. But I kind of get the feeling that like 2 months from now, they might be in the same place. Or maybe they're madly in love again. It's like Schrodinger's relationship. Who knows?
Or somewhere in the
Yeah.
middle. Maybe they stay
Or somewhere
friends
in
and
the middle.
they hang out. You know what I mean? I mean, that's cool too.
Or if it does end, then I'm hoping the thing that for me, I think it's less, the lesson they learn is probably less about like, how do I become less boring? How do I become less eccentric or whatever those types of things are? And I think it's more, even though this is a relationship movie, I think the growth is much more internal because both of these characters were people who were both so hurt by their past that they needed to put it in a box and never look at it away, quite literally through the magic of like erasing their memories. And now they're moving forward with the understanding of it's best that we have had those memories, and granted, they don't have all of them now, but they have like the audio tapes and stuff like that. So I'm hoping that when that breakup does happen, that they're able to go like, God, this hurts so much right now, but I can't stuff it away the way I did before. I'm going to have to carry this forward instead of looking back. I do want to mention Kate Winslet's hair in this as something that was super important to the plot in a really nice way. Again, I mentioned the whole Manic Pixie Dream Girl. They dye their hair different colors, and it's to show how kooky they are. But here, I've watched movies where you have to follow different timelines, and sometimes it's hard to do them. Like, if you think about the movie, like Shane Carruth's Primer, if anyone's watched that, there's like 87 different timelines, and you have to like have a map to like follow. I love the movie, but it does like, you can't like blink or you miss it. This one, Kate Winslet's hair is a different color at different stages of her story, which is a quick visual cue at any given time. Like, oh, she's got the blue hair. This must be here. Okay, now her hair is orange. Oh, now it's green. So this must be at a different stage. It very quickly sort of reorients you, like when those scene changes happen, so that you're not spending the next like 5 minutes of dialogue figuring out where you're at. You can just sort of go, okay, where am I? Okay, yeah, gotcha. And I think that's super clever. I think that is a super clever way for Gondry to do it without having to do like a crazy like, Meanwhile, or 10 minutes later, 5 minutes
Mhm.
earlier, any type of screen wipes or anything like that, you can just watch Winslet's hair.
Yeah, and I mentioned 500 Days of Summer earlier. One thing that movie does, because it too tells the story in a non-linear way, but it'll have like numbers come up on the screen, like the calendar dates on a clock or whatever. Like they'll fall away and scroll back, and it'll be like, day 134,
Day 22,
day 400, and, so it tells you sort of where you are. But one thing I like about this film is it doesn't spoon feed that to you. Like, you have to pay attention. We were watching this movie last night, and our dinner arrived in the middle of the film, and we're both, we like to watch movies all the way through without like pausing and doing something else and coming back typically. But we're like, you know what? There's no way we can eat dinner and watch this movie, because we'll miss Kate Winslet's hair color that clues us in. We'll miss cool visual things like people disappearing and environments, getting trippy and warped because the memory is like being burned out behind them. So we had to watch an episode of Star Trek Voyager while we ate and then like come back to it afterwards. But it was really cool to be able to just pay attention to those things. And I feel like, I don't know, maybe, Jim, you're the one that had the birthday, but maybe I'm the one that's feeling like, an old man right now, because I'm like, they don't make movies the way they used to. Get off my lawn. For as much as like some crazy films, like don't give you hardly anything, and it makes me want to smash my head through a wall, I feel like we just don't get enough films like this that have a perfect balance of giving you what you need to know without hitting you over the head with it. And I think this one just so masterfully does that.
Yeah. And Brad, you said we cut away to watch Star Trek Voyager. What were the two things on this, just so happens, on this Star Trek Voyager episode that we saw in that? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it totally wasn't intentional at all, but there's this episode of Star Trek Voyager where one of the characters knows these like encrypted codes in her mind, and she's part Borg. And so the person that wants to get these codes from her has someone working to basically extract the codes from her mind and then like erase her memories. So there's the whole memory erasure thing. But the really funny thing is, while this doctor character is doing it, he's also singing, oh my darling Clementine.
And
I'm like, it was totally random.
Something had to happen there. Like somebody got an idea somewhere. Maybe, I don't know. It was.
We live in the algorithm.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. I definitely want to talk about a little bit about Brad. I know you loved seeing Hulk in this movie.
Mark Ruffalo and his tidy whities and
in his underwear, shirtless for like 20 minutes of.
Oh God, giving me the vapors.
Yeah, I know you like that. And by the way, I may be a daddy to some people, but I had a daddy thing for Tom Wilkinson. Like he is so good in everything he's done. I believe he's gone now. Is that right? I think we lost him maybe a few years ago. I hope that I'm not. I hope that he's not gone, but I hope that I'm not wrong either. I thought maybe
he might still be with us.
Oh no!
Yeah, I think he's still with us.
Huh. All right. Well, I retract that then. I miss him in movies then because I haven't seen him in much. But
yeah, he's still alive.
I do love Tom Wilkinson, and I really love his doctor in this. Although it's a smaller role, it is a pivotal role, and also to see somebody like. Oh God, I'm having trouble with names now.
Elijah Wood?
No, we mentioned her before.
Kirsten Dunst?
Yeah, Kirsten Dunst in this movie, and also a smaller role. This movie has a twist. Are we in spoilers? We are, right?
Oh, the whole thing.
The whole thing, yeah.
I love the twist of this movie. I hadn't remembered that twist. I knew there was something along the way somewhere, but I really hadn't remembered the twist that that she had her memory wiped of by the doctor, right? Which is kind of weird if you think about it. And the fact that she was the one to go back and kind of, I would almost like to see this movie done in in the perspective of that relationship, because it was really weird, kind of what happened there, right? She seemed like the seductress, I guess, at least in the scene that we saw, but then she finds out that this had all kind of happened before, and it was an issue, and she just kind of went off the deep end, and
the way she finds out was it was jarring for me, because just to kind of set this up, like she's putting the moves on the doctor, right, in Joel's apartment or house or whatever it was, and then the doctor's wife pulls up because, of course, he got called in the middle of the night. He gets this address to go to over the phone because Mark Ruffalo is having issue with the memory machine. So inevitably, the wife shows up, sees the doctor kissing, Kirsten Dunst. So she runs out and she's trying to explain to the wife, like, I put the moves on him. He didn't do anything wrong. And the wife is like, you know what? You can have him. And the sad thing is, you already did. And I'm like, wait, what? I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? And then I'm like, oh, she had her memory wiped. What? That was amazing.
Yeah, and then when she goes back to listen to her tape that she made, and she's having second thoughts, and the doctor's like, oh no, we both agreed this was going to be for the best. So it's this weird coercion stuff going on. It's just super creepy and uncomfortable.
You definitely realize the amount of power that he wielded in that office flirtation / relationship and all the way through, which it's great because it makes you recontextualize that character too. Like, okay, this is who he really is.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that the movie obviously kind of demonizes the whole technology thing that was used in this movie, the purpose of it. Certainly it takes a negative view of what this company does. I think in terms of the way it's used in the story, but of course brought the doctor down with it at the same time, in a kind of a interesting way.
Yeah, I think just having access to this sort of power in a lot of ways, is just so easily corruptible. Like Elijah Wood's character is the ultra creep, right? And he's like, oh, I don't know how to talk to girls. Let me take over this guy's, all of his smooth girlfriend moves and his lines and his drawings and stuff. And I can pretend to be the cool guy. And yeah, I mean, I guess not to mirror too much of what's going on, but too much power, it leads to too much corruption. So
handily so.
Yeah, it was really weird, seeing the Elijah Wood character reading these love letters or poems or whatever, and then trying to pass them off as his own. And the Clementine character really wasn't buying it at all. He'd say these things that made her super uncomfortable and weird. And I don't know. I love Frodo, but he made me really uncomfortable.
Go ahead.
No, I say he plays creepy very, very well.
He absolutely does. He's in the full edge of his career right now, even where he plays these creepy dudes. That's why he's been in a lot of genre films and produces and just behind the scenes on a lot of horror film productions, because I think he's realized that's his community, that's the group that he likes being with, and those are the roles that he's attracted to, and he does it so well.
Absolutely. Hey, I had a question regarding the plot. What was the deal with her at one point, or him having a memory, or him having a fragment of her saying, "Meet me in Montauk"? Where did that come from? That I think it was
like a subliminal message in a way. That place held importance for both of them because it's where they both first met. And so obviously it's not real, at least I don't think it's really her in his brain, because her mind's already been wiped. But it's the representation of her that says meet me in Montauk. And that's why when we see him at the train station, he's about to go to work, he suddenly decides, oh no, I'm going to go to Montauk instead. It's a subconscious drive to go back there, and it sparks meeting all over again. And since it was Valentine's Day and they met, I guess, on Valentine's Day at that party. It's a little convenient that she just happened to be there, but I mean, it works.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of the magical moment, but I think it's smart to reference like a city, because that's something that they can't erase, right? Like that company is never going to be able to say, oh, the city doesn't exist, right? So if they say, hey, Montauk, right, then that's a memory that you can hold on to, and it's like, okay, and then you can remember that.
Yeah, and there's, I guess there's multiple ways of getting to Montauk, but there's, like, if you think about it, like if someone were to say, hey, you need to go to X city, you would probably go, oh, I would get there via bus. I'd get there via this road. I get there because that's what's inherent to you. So even if you lost your memory or whatever, you would probably, the next time you went there, go that same route. So the fact that they met on this same route to the same area, like it's sort of tied to just some of their old familiar behaviors.
Yeah. And I've also thought it was interesting the way this movie kind of, like some other movies do, starts at the end, kind of their journey, right? You're watching the movie, you're seeing you're thinking, if it's your first time through, that this is the beginning of the relationship, but in fact, it's really kind of the beginning of their redo, I guess, right? And I thought that was brilliant because you didn't even realize that until probably 30-40 minutes into the movie, when I think the first time you really have an inkling that something's afoot is when Elijah Wood shows up, when he's outside the car, in that scene where he kind of says, "Hey, buddy, what are you doing here? What are you doing here?" And then of course he gets the Dear John notice from Lacuna. Is that the company that says, "Oh, by the way, Clementine has had her memory wiped," and it kind of starts the whole spiral and everything going sideways.
It's so neat because, like, even taking the technology of this film aside, like we mentioned, this is a sci-fi story, but even taking the technology of this film aside, like there's a lot that you can relate to your own life. You had something that hurt you in the past, embrace it for what it is instead of like ignoring it. Even the Elijah Wood character, like the reason that what he was doing wasn't successful, when he was parroting Joel's words, wasn't because he was saying the wrong things, but because they were disingenuous to him. And I think that there's also, maybe like a little micro message in there too. This isn't what the film's about necessarily, but I think there is something about, like, if I saw the way that, like, one person goes out there and talks to someone and is successful, I can't necessarily just mimic that. I have to be whatever my version of that is, my sincere version of myself, putting myself out there. And I think that there's a lot of that in this film, about being sincere to who you are, warts and all, as you move forward.
I think there's maybe a lot of those mini messages in here.
Yeah, one of them for me that really stood out is, there's this moment in the film where, they're in Joel's memory of their first meeting, and Clementine like breaks into this house. It's not hers. It's a beach house, right? And as things originally unfolded, Joel got creeped out and uncomfortable, and he left. Well, in this mind version that's happening, Clementine's like, "Hey, what would happen if you stayed this time?" And I think about that idea in like a lot of different aspects of my own life, where I feel awkward and I feel like, oh, I can't do something. I'm just going to leave. I'm not going to even attempt it. But now it's like, I think like, well, what would happen if you tried? Like, here's an example. I'm learning to ride a bike again for the first time in 35 years. And I took it out into the neighborhood for the very first time today. Still haven't completely figured out how to stop gracefully. But our neighborhood has this like hill that goes, down. And I'm at the top of that hill and I'm about to go down it. And I stopped myself. I'm like, nope, I'm just going to walk it back to the house. But that quote came to my mind. It's like, well, normally you would just puss out. Like, what would happen if you actually like did it this time? And so I rode the bike down the hill, still almost killed myself trying to stop in front of the driveway. That'll get easier. But I felt sort of like elated and proud of myself for doing something differently than I would have before. And I mean, I squarely credit the movie for giving me that idea.
Wow.
Yeah, actually, now that you brought that up, I guess there maybe is some like background growth in the Joel character, because she did bring him out onto the ice in the beginning of the movie, even though he really didn't want to. But he was able to trust her and do that. So I guess that is kind of hopeful. I hope they make it, guys.
Well, it's been kind of a rough year for this next statement in general. Like, one of the things that I've really wanted to do more of this year myself, like I think every year you kind of go into it, like what's your resolution or what the thing you're going to want to do is. And for me, mine was like saying yes more this year, you know, just like not giving myself the excuse to like stay home. Now, unfortunately, the excuse to stay home was sort of hoisted upon me. But aside from all of that, you know, I am leaving myself open to more of those opportunities that I would normally. I'm the best person in the world at talking myself out of a thing. So I'm allowing myself this year to not listen to that voice as much. So I think that's important.
I think that's a great voice to listen to, as long as it doesn't talk you out of wearing a mask or socially distancing when you can. Oh, guys, I feel like there's at least another hour and a half of stuff we could talk about in this movie, but I think we've kind of maybe hit the high points. Any final thoughts on Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind before we look to wrap up here?
One thing for me is just the visual effects. Like Michel Gondry's stuff is usually kind of goofy, and this is no exception. There are goofiness, but it really holds up 16 years later, and it's not like bad CG in things, and the use of like spotlights and camera tricks and stuff like that just really, really works, and I think just really makes this movie very special.
Oh yeah, there's
absolutely.
so many points that I can't remember all of them. One that sticks out is the scene we just talked about with them at the house at the end, where the house is basically disintegrating around them, and like they're partially standing in the house, partially standing on the sand of the beach with the water rushing up. It's pretty insane what they did there with, you know, I assume there were probably many practical effects there, just done with, like you said, with lighting. Probably, I don't know how much CG they used here. They used some, obviously, but animation techniques as well. Chris, I'm sure you noticed a lot of that stuff going on in the movie. You know, kind of animation in a live film blended really well, I thought. So yeah, there's so many that I probably can't even remember all of them. I'd have to go back and like make notes of like, wow, that scene really visually was really great.
Yeah.
Yeah, even the scene where they are like in his childhood, and they have basically two different scales that they're working with. They have a couple of different ways that they could have worked that. They could have used like a lot of like green screen, or they could have used like a lot of different things. But for a lot of those shots, and I was really watching for them this time, so I could see a couple of them because I wanted to make sure, but they used just a lot of forced perspective, where they would have like the table set, like they would have a small table, and then they would do another take with like a really long kind of oblong table where it's like bigger at one end and smaller at the other, so that when Jim Carrey's under here, he looks kind of small, but when she's up front, she looks much bigger. Like there was a lot of that was done fairly practically, and that's really cool for me because it's all optical illusion. It's the type of thing that you can't just like. I love the idea, like the computer animation and graphics is important, and there's a lot of like great things that they do with it. But I do love a good optical illusion on film.
Takes me back to the days of Adam West and Burt Ward scaling the side of a building by crouching on the floor. Yeah,
yeah.
I get it. I get it. Well, Chris Lopez, so excited that you could join us for this discussion. You know, this is one of your favorite movies of all time. Will, same for you. I don't know that this movie necessarily makes my like top movies of all time list. But it's pretty damn good. So if anybody has,
let it sink in a little.
yeah, maybe after it marinates some more and I see it again, maybe my mind will change. That's not to say it's a bad movie. I really loved it, but there's just so many wonderful movies. But if anyone has been watching, even if you've been spoiled, I think this movie does so much. I think we've only talked about like 10% of what makes this movie amazing. So I think it's absolutely worth your time to watch it if you haven't seen it yet. Peter Levins logged in, Jim, just as you were talking about daddies, and I think that tripped the trigger for him. I mean, who doesn't?
Putting my foot in my mouth about Tom Wilkinson, but yeah.
And Jeff Browning, hey Jeff, he says, enjoyed your guys' takes on a great film. Happy birthday, Jim. Enjoyed my first show of yours. Well, Jeff, thanks so much for tuning in.
Oh, that's so sweet.
You got to take someone's virginity on your birthday, babe.
Yeah. I may be old, but I still got it.
Well, just in case anybody wants to chat about movies or whatever between now and our next recording, let's maybe share some deets on where people can find you. Jim Poliafco, how can people interact with you online?
Oh, you can find me as far as movies go in two places, either right here where it says, at JJP Out West. Those are my initials, Out West. That's on Twitter, where I do a lot of not a lot of movie tweets, but when I do tweet, it's about movies usually. And also on Facebook, my name, Jim Poliafco, which is also right down here. So check me out on Facebook. I'll probably friend you if you send me a note and tell me who you are.
All right. Excellent. And Will, how about you?
You can find me on Twitter. I'm at Whatever Cove. It's right beneath my portrait. I'm not posting there a lot right now because I'm putting a lot of my efforts towards Facebook right now. I'm posting a lot on Facebook right now, given everything going on. But just search for me there, William Lindis. Send me a message first, just so I know who you are. I also post regularly on letterboxd.com. You can also search for William Lindis there. Add me. I'll add you back.
All right, excellent. And Chris Lopez, sexy voice of the Movie Bears podcast. Where can people find you? And if you want to share anything related to your art, cake, whatever, feel free.
Sure. So I'm Chris Lopez on Facebook, Oso Art on Twitter. I post drawings and comics whenever I can get to them, which isn't too often, but I'm happy when I do get that chance. And unfortunately, Cake was postponed this year, but cakechicago.com. Next year, it'll be back in Chicago full force for all your alternative comics needs.
Yay, alternative comics. Good stuff. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Chris. Folks, if you want to talk with me, you can find me on Facebook. Just search for Brad Harris. I'm the one who does not have the Confederate flag as a background, so that should make it really easy to find me. Probably have some friends in common with you already. But yeah, please message first so that I know you're not a bot. And I'm on Letterboxd as well as Twitter at iBradPro. Thanks so much to everyone who tuned in live for the show this week. Also, thanks to everyone who is viewing the show on digital tape delay. I only said that once this episode. Normally I say it 12 times. How does that work? Through the magic of YouTube or Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you enjoy podcasts, you should be able to find us. Thank you, as always, for your support of the show. This was episode 369. Guys, we missed out on opportunities to make 69 jokes. How did we let that happen?
I don't know.
I'll catch you again in 100.
Oh, goodness.
For 469? Yeah, you absolutely should.
I'm all for
Before that will be 420.
Hey.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy. All right. Well, have a great week, everybody. Stay sane, stay safe, and we will see you all next time. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.